For 59 years, one piece of footage has stood at the center of one of the greatest mysteries in American history. 59 seconds of shaky 16mm film, a creature walking across a riverbed, turning to look at the camera, then disappearing into the trees. Scientists couldn't explain it. Hollywood special effects experts couldn't debunk it. Governments ignored it. And hundreds of millions of people watched it and asked the same question. Is that real? This year, at the SXSW Film Festival in Austin, a new documentary called Capturing Bigfoot dropped what many are calling the most devastating blow to Bigfoot belief in history. A rehearsal tape, shot a year before the famous footage, showing a man in a fur suit. A confession from Roger Patterson's own son. The Bigfoot community is in meltdown. But here's what nobody's telling you. Debunking the Patterson-Gimlin film doesn't debunk Bigfoot. And the evidence they never talk about is the stuff that actually keeps scientists up at night. October 20th, 1967. Bluff Creek, Northern California. Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin are on horseback filming a documentary about Bigfoot, a creature Patterson had been obsessed with for years. Patterson's horse rears up. He grabs his camera, runs forward, and captures 59 seconds of footage that would change everything. A large, bipedal creature, later nicknamed Patty, walking steadily across a gravel bar, long arms swinging, covered head to toe in dark hair. At one point it turns and looks directly at the camera. Then it walks into the trees. Gone. Patterson died of cancer in 1972, 5 years after filming it, maintaining until his death that what he filmed was real. Bob Gimlin, still alive today, in his 90s, has never wavered. For nearly 6 decades, he has looked people in the eye and said, "That was not a man in a suit." The film became the single most analyzed piece of footage in cryptid history, frame by frame, pixel by pixel, for nearly 60 years. And for nearly 60 years, nobody could definitively prove it was fake. Until now. Maybe. Capturing Bigfoot premiered at SXSW in March 2026. Director Mark Evans teaches film at Olympic College in Washington State. In 2022, a colleague approached him with a box of old film reels. Her late father had worked at a film processing lab in the 1960s. He was personally connected to Patterson and Gimlin socially, and apparently he kept something. On those reels, footage nobody had ever seen. Shot in 1966, a full year before the famous Bluff Creek film. It shows a man in a fur suit, Bob Gimlin on horseback, shot in a forest that looks like Washington State, where Patterson and Gimlin actually lived, not Northern California, where they claimed they stumbled onto Bigfoot by chance. A rehearsal, a test run, practice footage. If you're filming a real encounter, you don't rehearse. But that's not the most devastating part. The documentary also contains a confession, not from Bob Gimlin, not from a random person claiming to have been in the suit, from Clint Patterson, Roger Patterson's own son. According to the Skeptical Inquirer's review of the film, Clint Patterson admits it was a hoax, his father's creation, an elaborate, well-executed deception that fooled the world for nearly 60 years. The Bigfoot community response? Meltdown. Reddit's Bigfoot subreddit erupted. True believers accused the new footage of being AI-generated. People who had spent decades studying the film refused to accept it. One researcher wrote, "I do know that I am internally coping." One YouTuber who attended the SXSW screening and changed his mind after watching it was harassed and received death threats from believers. Director Mark Evans told Business Insider, "It's almost like when fake news became a thing, then everything's fake news. I think we're in that same boat now with AI, because something could be AI, anything could be dismissed. Now here's where it gets complicated, because debunking was always easier said than done with this film. For decades, the most credible challenge came from a man named Bill Munns, a Hollywood costume and makeup professional with 40 years of experience building creature suits for major films. Munns spent years doing a frame-by-frame forensic analysis of the Patterson-Gimlin footage. His conclusion, published in a peer-reviewed paper, was that the creature's proportions, muscle movement, and gait were inconsistent with a human in a suit. He noted the creature's hip structure, the way the muscles in its upper leg flex independently of its suit, and most critically, the sheer mass and fluidity of movement that he argued no costume available in 1967 could replicate. Hollywood legend Stan Winston, the man behind the effects in Terminator, Predator, and Jurassic Park, said on record that while he believed it was possible to fake, he could not personally explain several elements of the footage. And Bob Gimlin's story never changed. Not once. Not in 59 years. No deathbed confession. No money taken for a tell-all. No inconsistencies under repeated questioning. The skeptic's own go-to argument became a problem. If Patterson was a known con man running money-making schemes, why did this particular scheme never make him rich? The footage was licensed for almost nothing. He died nearly broke. Now Clint Patterson's confession changes the equation significantly. But some researchers are asking, what possible reason does the son of a man who claimed to film a real Bigfoot have to suddenly say it was fake? Is it grief? A lifetime of carrying a secret? Or something else? The documentary hasn't had a wide release yet. Most people haven't seen the rehearsal footage themselves. And that matters. Here's the part of this story that almost nobody covers. Even if the Patterson-Gimlin film is completely, totally, definitively fake, it doesn't explain the rest of it. The Skookum Cast, 2000. A team of researchers from the BFRO, the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, placed fruit as bait in a muddy area near Skookum Meadow in Washington State's Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. They came back the next morning and found a massive impression in the mud. Not a footprint, a full-body impression, as if something very large had lain on its side to reach the fruit without stepping in the mud. The cast was taken to a team of scientists, including primatologists, physical anthropologists, and wildlife biologists. Their conclusion: the impression was consistent with a large, unknown primate. Dermal ridges, the biological equivalent of fingerprints, were present and consistent across the impression. Dr. Grover Krantz, a physical anthropologist at Washington State University, studied the cast and stated it was not consistent with any known North American animal. The Skookum Cast is sitting in a museum. Nobody has explained it. The dermal ridge footprints, over decades of Bigfoot track finds. A subset of the best preserved prints contain dermal ridges, the same fine-line patterns found on human fingerprints present on the soles of primate feet. These patterns are biologically complex. They are extremely difficult to fake because they require not just pressure, but the correct biological tissue to create them. Multiple forensic analysts, including Jimmy Chilcutt, a fingerprint examiner with the Conroe Police Department in Texas, examined these prints and concluded they were not made by a human foot and showed characteristics consistent with an unknown primate. Chilcutt went in as a skeptic. He came out a believer. The thousands of independent sightings. The Patterson-Gimlin film is one data point. What can't be hoaxed are the thousands of independent sighting reports from people with no connection to each other: loggers, hunters, law enforcement officers, military veterans across the Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, and deep into Appalachia. Multiple Native American nations with zero connection to each other geographically have words in their languages for the same creature: the Lummi, the Tsyils, the Tlingit, the Chehalis, each with detailed, consistent descriptions, each with traditions going back generations. These traditions predate Roger Patterson by centuries. The DNA question. In 2012, geneticist Dr. Melba Ketchum published a study claiming to have sequenced Bigfoot DNA from dozens of submitted hair and tissue samples. Her conclusion: an unknown hominin species with human mitochondrial DNA and non-human nuclear DNA, suggesting a hybrid that diverged from humans approximately 15,000 years ago. The scientific community largely rejected her methodology, but several independent labs that have tested anomalous hair samples have returned results of unknown primate, not bear, not human, not any cataloged species. Unknown. So, where does that leave us? The most famous piece of Bigfoot evidence in history was almost certainly a hoax. Roger Patterson's own son has admitted it. There's a rehearsal tape, the documentary is real, and the people who saw it at SXSW came out changed. But the Patterson-Gimlin film was never the whole case. It was the flashy centerpiece, the thing everybody pointed to, the 59 seconds that made it pop culture. The real evidence: the Skookum Cast, the dermal ridge prints, the DNA anomalies, the independent sightings, the indigenous traditions that go back centuries. That evidence is still sitting there, unexplained. Patterson might have been a con man. His film might have been a hoax, but something is leaving those tracks. Drop a comment. Does the confession change your mind? Or do you think there's still something out there? I want to know where you stand. Subscribe. The Skinwalker video, the Dogman breakdown, and the alien-based deep dive are all up. Links in the description. The film was fake. The mystery isn't over.